This is Ford's CEO sounding the alarms because now he is unable to hide his frustration with Donald Trump. It was a quiet storm at first, hushed conversations in corporate boardrooms, late-night emergency meetings, panicked phone calls to Washington. But then the real explosion came. Ford's CEO Jim Farley, known for measured words and corporate composure, broke the silence, exposing that Trump's tariffs are causing chaos in the auto industry. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, and the very survival of Ford and General Motors are now on the line. As the walls closed in, desperate CEOs took their last gamble. Go public, plead with Trump, or watch the greatest names in American industry crumble before their eyes. But how did it all unravel so fast? How did a trade war meant to protect America end up threatening to burn down its own factories? And what did Ford's CEO say that is haunting Trump? In this video, let's find out. For decades, Ford and General Motors symbolized the heart of American manufacturing. Their sprawling assembly plants, their roaring engines, and their ability to deliver millions of vehicles to eager customers were underpinned by a deeply connected network stretching far beyond U.S. borders. Detroit was the brain, but Mexico and Canada were the muscles, providing parts, labor, and supply chain efficiency that kept the behemoths alive in a fiercely competitive world. Yet with one aggressive move, Donald Trump threatened to tear that web apart. His proposal to slap tariffs ranging from 25% to 100% on imported vehicles and parts wasn't just a tough bargaining chip. It detonated a financial bomb right in the middle of America's most iconic industry. Jim Farley, Ford's no-nonsense CEO, didn't bother dressing it up. On national television, at industry summits, in private meetings, his message was blunt. Trump's policies would blow a hole through the U.S. auto industry like nothing we have ever seen. And the first signs of devastation were immediate. Stock markets buckled under the pressure. Critical supply chains that had been optimized for decades began freezing up. Thousands of suppliers, small and large, started preparing for layoffs, bankruptcy filings, and shuttered factories. Ford and GM, whose profit margins were already narrowing under inflation and global competition, suddenly found themselves staring into an abyss deeper than anything the oil crisis of the 1970s had ever unleashed. But this was only the beginning, because the deeper damage wasn't just economic, it was existential. It threatened to undermine the entire logic of how American automaking had survived globalization at all. Ford and GM's survival strategy in the 21st century depended not on flag-waving, but on cold, ruthless efficiency. Components essential to modern vehicles, like engines, transmissions, infotainment systems, and specialized electronics, didn't all come from Detroit. They flowed in daily from factories in Mexico and Canada, where lower labor costs and trade agreements kept the business sustainable. When Trump's tariff threat hit first with a 25% levy, then an even more absurd 100% proposal, targeting Canadian imports, it turned every incoming vehicle and part into a financial time bomb. Vehicles costing $25,000 to build would now leap to $30,000 or beyond overnight. Already, razor-thin profit margins would be obliterated. And the core business model of making affordable cars for middle-class Americans would collapse like a house of cards. Ford and GM were trapped between two equally disastrous choices. They could pass the extra cost onto customers, effectively raising car prices by thousands of dollars and pricing out millions of potential buyers. Or they could swallow the cost themselves, gutting their own profitability and risking mass layoffs, shutdowns, and ultimately brand erosion. Meanwhile, foreign competitors like Toyota, Hyundai, and BMW, many of whom had already invested heavily in US-based manufacturing, were positioned perfectly to swoop in. They could offer competitive prices without the same exposure to Trump's tariffs, carving deeper into Ford and GM's already shrinking market share. In other words, the once unshakable giants of American industry were now standing not just in a storm. They were standing on quicksand. And financial markets, always hypersensitive to uncertainty, didn't wait for the tariffs to be finalized. The mere threat was enough to trigger an avalanche. Ford and GM's stock prices plummeted within days. Billions of dollars in market capitalization were wiped out as investors raced to unload shares tied to an industry staring down the barrel of higher costs, disrupted supply chains, and collapsing consumer demand. It wasn't just a few nervous traders. It was systemic. Analysts issued downgrade after downgrade. Hedge funds pulled out. Pension funds hesitated. The financial sector, which often props up large industrial players through credit and investment, started whispering that a prolonged trade war could permanently cripple America's auto industry. Meanwhile, Wall Street's panic rippled outward, slowing investment in new auto technologies, freezing expansion plans, and pushing auto suppliers dangerously close to insolvency. In the middle of this chaos, Ford's Jim Farley and GM's Mary Barra scrambled to stem the bleeding. Farley rushed to Washington, D.C. twice in less than a month, pleading with lawmakers to reconsider the catastrophic consequences. He presented spreadsheets, graphs, and dire forecasts, warning that mass layoffs, plant closures, and a seismic downturn in American manufacturing would follow if Trump's threats became reality. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, and current affairs impacting your lives. Despite the mounting evidence, Trump's administration remained publicly defiant. They doubled down on nationalist rhetoric, talking of bringing back jobs, while ignoring the cold, brutal fact that new factories take years to build and would not replace the massive collapse happening right now. Ford and GM, long celebrated as symbols of American ingenuity, were being battered not by foreign competition, but by the very government that once claimed to protect them. And the worst part? The nightmare was still just beginning. As Ford and GM wrestled with the immediate catastrophe of vehicle tariffs, another quieter but equally deadly force was closing in: the relentless squeeze from Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. It wasn't the kind of disaster that made headlines overnight. It was slower, more corrosive, the kind of economic poison that hollowed out companies from the inside before anyone realized the full extent of the damage. Steel is the skeleton of every vehicle rolling off an American assembly line. Aluminum, increasingly vital for lightweight, fuel-efficient designs, is the muscle. Ford has proudly proclaimed that 90% of its steel is domestically sourced, but it's the remaining 10%, the imported specialty steel and aluminum, critical for high-performance engines and bodywork, that is now turning into a budgetary nightmare. With import tariffs pushing prices sky-high, every quarter brings millions in additional costs piling up on Ford and GM's balance sheets, and looming contracts for 2025 and beyond already hint at even worse price escalations. The impact is devastating in combination with the car tariffs. On one front, Ford and GM face exploding vehicle production costs. On another, the very raw materials they depend on are becoming luxury items. Together, these two forces form a brutal pincer movement, squeezing margins to the breaking point, inflating car prices, alienating customers, and delivering the final deadly advantage to foreign automakers who aren't shackled by the same self-inflicted wounds. Detroit, once the engine of the world, now finds itself running out of fuel and out of time. However, in rally after rally, Trump promised the same dream: bring back the auto jobs, rebuild American factories, restore the lost manufacturing glory. It was a promise that stirred hearts in the Rust Belt, where decades of decline had left scars that still throbbed. But beneath the slogans, reality had a colder, harsher plan. Even if tariffs succeeded in forcing some production back onto American soil, it wouldn't trigger a golden age of assembly line jobs. Modern car factories run on robots, not workers. Automated systems now dominate tasks that once employed thousands, like welding, painting, and assembly. Moving production to America wouldn't revive the job market. It would simply create gleaming, sterile facilities, needing a fraction of the labor of the past. Meanwhile, the immediate collapse of supply chains, the skyrocketing costs of parts and metals, and the mass uncertainty already underway would trigger a bloodbath of layoffs among the very workers Trump promised to protect. Suppliers would go under. Dealerships would downsize. Engineering teams would be gutted. Ford's CEO Jim Farley and GM's Mary Barra have both quietly warned policymakers, this isn't protectionism, it's suicide. Instead of a job boom, the U.S. auto industry is staring at a savage contraction, one where American workers lose first and foreign competitors clean up the wreckage. Now, as Ford and GM struggle to plug the leaks in their sinking ship, another revolution is quietly redrawing the entire future of the auto world. And it's not coming from Detroit, it's coming from China. China's electric vehicle titans, like BYD, NIO, and XPeng, are rising even faster, armed with massive government support, cutting-edge battery technology, and ruthless manufacturing efficiency. In the time Ford and GM take to survive Trump's tariff-driven chaos, Chinese automakers are gaining on them, preparing to unleash an invasion of affordable, high-tech EVs onto the global market. The longer Ford and GM bleed, the faster China's automakers seize the future of mobility. The next decade of the automotive world is being written right now. And if Detroit can't catch up, it risks becoming a relic of a bygone era. An industry that once roared with innovation and ambition now sputters under the weight of outdated protectionism and political miscalculations. The stakes today are bigger than Ford or GM's quarterly earnings. They are bigger than Trump's campaign promises. They are bigger than any one trade war. What's unfolding is a battle for the soul of the American economy itself. Today, Ford and GM are fighting with everything they have. Lobbyists are swarming Washington. Economists are sounding the alarm. Workers are praying their plants survive. But unless reality punches through the fog of political posturing, Detroit may not just face another bad year. It could face the beginning of the end. And if that happens, the true cost of the tariffs won't be measured in dollars. It will be measured in lost dreams, broken industries, and a hollowed-out future. What do you think? Will Trump really back down before it's too late? Can Ford and GM survive the economic hurricane barreling toward them? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on whether we are witnessing the slow-motion death of America's greatest industrial icons. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, changing world order and current affairs, things you need to stay informed. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.